Hey everyone, my name is Adrian.
My name's Aaron.
Welcome back to Teach One, the health and wellness podcast that aims to empower you by improving your awareness of your mental, social, and physical being through shared experience. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with us. Thank you for investing in yourself. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and join our community on Facebook and on Instagram at TWOTEACHONE. That's To Teach One. And on our website at www.2teachone.com. That's www, the number 2, TEACH, the number 1.com.
To Teach One.
That's right. Today's guest is a community advocate, board member at the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, peer and employment specialist who's currently working at Work Options for Women. You can reach her via email at cmrecoverycoach@gmail.com and on Facebook at CUICAM at Cuica M. Welcome to the podcast, Cuica. How you doing?
Let me just be awkward. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, y'all won't know because you just, this is the beginning of the episode, but we just had like a great 45-minute warm-up. So
Yeah,
we're
seriously.
ready to roll.
All the way warmed up.
Oh, yeah.
I think more than ever before.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
The energy is
wonderful.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, so welcome, Cuica.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
And happy birthday.
yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited about journeying on this fourth decade.
Fantastic. I'm so glad. So I haven't even known Cuica for very long, but I just feel like her spirit is so much fun and just very welcoming and warm. And, you've just got that quality that makes people, draw closer to you.
Don't make me blush.
It's a pleasure. No,
I
all
can't
true.
handle it.
All true. I say this stuff to everyone that I meet, just like everyone else. The people that made me aware of you all said similar things too. They're like, Cuica?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I know Cuica.
Yeah, I know Cuica, man. She's amazing. Owen, of course, goes into, yeah, Queeks. Oh my God. What's up, Owen?
Flowin' knowin'.
One of our buddies.
Iceberg, yeah.
So, So a few weeks back, actually a little while ago, I was talking to Aaron, right? We live in a part of town that is very much, you can feel the presence of, homelessness there. And we got to talking and we're just wondering, how much do we really know about, what the people around us are experiencing? How much, more can we learn so that we can actually, be able to be more sensitive in the way we interact with, the people in the neighborhood. We know some of, the people in our neighborhood, the homeless folks, by name. Like, we've been there for a while now, right? And so we'll freak them out. We'll be like, hey, what's up, Fred? And they're like, wait, how do you know my name? All suspicious and stuff. But we get to know their stories. Like, once in a while, we actually have the privilege of getting to know some of the stories, because a lot of people might just look at, the homeless or not even want to even acknowledge their presence. I'm not even sure what it's about. Is it shame? Is it fear? I'm sure it's a little bit of all of those things. But I, for one, feel very fortunate to be able to, be in a place where I have, developed my sense of humanity enough and gotten to know, the people that are around me and, genuinely care about, what's going on in their lives. So, yeah, so we kind of had this discussion and we're trying to figure out how can we learn more, right? How can we get more connected and more educated about, this topic? And then, once we had that discussion, it's like we put it in the universe and here you are,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Well, first of all, I love talking about folks who are going through life challenges because literally it's everybody at one point in their life. So I like to start off talking about, educating about common phrases and uses of phrases that aren't quite, humanizing. So I say not call people by their housing situation, like the homeless.
Okay.
They're people. They're our unhoused neighbors.
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah.
first of all, let's take that label that has become almost slanderous because identifying a person or a human being by their housing status, I mean, it's like calling you guys group home
Yeah, right.
livers or,
But
you know what I'm
that's-
saying?
No,
like,
I get it. Yeah. Why is it that is
yeah.
what we say instead of like, there's John, we're
Yeah.
like, oh, homeless guy.
Neighbors without homes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Neighbors without homes. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And this is why we're having this discussion, because
Yeah.
now I know.
Well, and I've heard the term, I've noticed it being used on some of the materials that we get from like the city. It's people who are experiencing homelessness,
yes.
not homeless people. And I noticed that was the verbiage, and I thought that was really neat.
Yes.
Because it's true. They're just experiencing homeless. They are not homeless. And I feel the same way because it's kind of like when somebody who crossed the border who may not have proper documentation, they're called illegals. But you don't call somebody who got a misdemeanor because they stole a razor at Walgreens. You're not like, there's an illegal, So
Right.
it's like words and the way that we label people have power and meaning.
Oh, so much power. And I think that, so what was one of the first things that once I decided to go down the path that I'm on now with, as far as my employment, I learned about person first language and strengths based approaches. It's like the scientific studies that you, say you speak lovely or kindly to a plant, it grows amazing. Or,
Yeah.
they have studies where, you speak to ice that's being frozen.
Yeah.
And it will be cracked and like all shattered with negative talk and turn into like beautiful snowflake patterns with positive talk. So I think that person first language it was, eye-opening for me. And it was also very empowering because it takes those labels that ends up separating us and causing all sorts of judgment. And it takes those away
Yeah.
because I think when you can label something, you can put it away and never look at it again.
Interesting.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about human beings, I think it's important to remind people that they're people first,
Yeah.
no matter their housing status. So that's like one thing I like to, open up.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, and I like that you started with that right after I said what I said, and it's a good place to start. So now I know how to approach that, because a lot of people, there's so many words on a day-to-day basis that we use that we don't know the history and the kind of impact that they have, right? And people just say them, whether it's because it's a societal norm or, whatever it may be, right? So it's really good to have more, just be educated about what is actually appropriate, why, so that we can be more sensitive, and just interact normally.
Absolutely. And I was going to kind of school you on that earlier, but I'm like, let me take advantage of this real quick.
No, absolutely.
No, that's good. That's good.
So no harm, no foul.
No harm, no foul. But before we get into everything, right? Who's Cuica? Give us, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then you can get into your story.
Yes. Well, my name is Cuica Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Okay.
If any one of our guests or listeners has seen the Six-Fingered Man, please let us know immediately. It's,
I've been on the lookout. Well, let's just say, who is Cuica? I mean, that was a wonderful introduction that you gave. But there was a time in my life where that was not, my goal or my passion. And, I've been on a very interesting kind of wild journey, but I would not trade any of it in for the life that I have today. And I just feel so fulfilled. So, I can just kind of walk you through it's 4 decades worth, so I'll kind of scrunch it up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, feel free.
So I was born 40 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. So I grew up here in the Denver metro area, and it was, for me, it was like a normal childhood. My mom had left my dad in California and transplanted us out here when we were young, and met my stepfather. And he was like the only dad I knew because I didn't remember. I was too little. I didn't remember my dad. So, it's just wonderful little family, mom, dad, me and my sister. We did the whole Colorado thing, camping, and we were active, and it was great. But it was right around the time that you transition from elementary school to middle school. I had just gotten like my hair cut and I looked like a boy. It was like, so, and I was part of a religious, family. So I went to church. So I was like this kind of outcast, like religious girl that looked like a boy. And I started to, I guess, it was isolation that I did myself just because I felt, I didn't feel like I was a part of. There was, school's so rough with, kids. And I think just in general, we need to reimagine schooling. But it was rough. So I was isolated. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And it was finally around the time that my hair grew out and I started to like grow up a little bit. I'm like, oh, yay, here I am. Like I started to feel like maybe I was a part of, but I hadn't noticed that I was using some very superficial things to make me feel whole. It was the 90s and so much fun. I mean, come on. It was like when hip hop was like breaking all the way through and it was amazing. And I guess I took care of myself by superficial, relationships. I kind of started pushing away from the strict religious household that I was in. I feel like that growing up, my mom was a lot older than she was an older mom. So she was 40 when she had me. And, there just is a huge difference between growing up in the 50s versus growing up in the 90s. So I was in this household that like I could never do anything like my friends. I always felt like I was out here on the sidelines kind of. And so it turned into really empty relationships in high school. And I got pregnant in high school and I was like the 90s teenage pregnancy kind of scare. It was making mainstream news. And, it's just like one of those things that happened in my generation. And so that did not, make me feel like I was included any more than I already wasn't. It was like, oh, whoa, now I'm way, way, way over here. And so I placed my son for open adoption and tried to like switch schools, tried to like get back on track. And to get back on track, I was like, well, let me just like pretend none of that ever happened. And so I would say there was a lot of unresolved emotional trauma that happened at a very young age for, it's adolescence. And I went into college and I met alcohol and I started, self-medicating with booze and partying. And I had managed to get my life back on track with, school. I got a scholarship to a university and within a year I lost it and I went and started working. After I dropped out of college and I just went straight into a job, I actually found a job and a career path by happenstance. I started doing real estate at the age of 20, starting off at like a low-level administrative assistant, and I just like found my like groove. And so I climbed up really, really fast in there and I got my real estate license and I had this amazing career all of a sudden. So it was like the universe dropped this amazing bomb on me, but I wasn't like nurturing it or taking care of it. I'm like, yeah, I did this. I got this. My ego is so big, because I was in my mid-20s and I was already making a ton of money. And I met my daughter's father and like my life was just like cruising along. We had a suburbia life. We bought a home at age 25. He was kind of skyrocketing in his construction career and we were just like building and growing, but like there was no foundation. We both, had substance use issues. We drank a ton. I think at that time I was functioning, with my drinking and drug use. And I was in an environment where my career was flourishing. You take CEOs out to, drinks and dinner, and you earn their office space lease and I mean, it was just like, it was part of the schmooze is drinking, partying, you make money. So it was like this lifestyle that, kept telling me, you're doing the right thing. You're on the right path. And it wasn't until our relationship started falling apart and there was drugs involved, and this, life that we'd built on this shaky foundation was slipping away, and it was like in quicksand. It was sinking. And so I consider that like this really big, stressful event. And I had all these unresolved emotional trauma issues that I wasn't dealing with. I mean, I had just stuffed it so far deep inside that I didn't know how to handle emotionally charged situations starting at a very young age. And it wasn't because that I wasn't willing. It was just, I didn't know how to feel. I didn't like the way that I was feeling when I was dealing with the grief of placing my son for adoption. And then I went immediately into that same zone when my daughter's father and I's relationship kind of went away. And it was like this huge, traumatic, stressful event. And the only self-care kind of take care of my emotional, mental well-being was booze. It was like not dealing. Anything to not feel was what I did. And obviously that's like the worst thing you can do when you're faced with an emotional crisis. I ended up losing my career. My house went into foreclosure. It was right when the recession hit. So it was like 2007. So, people were losing their homes left and right. I lost my career, house, and then I was like driving around, usually with being drunk and or drugs in the car. And then I entered the criminal justice system. And then it was scary at first. And I think that it was the first time I was introduced to the idea or the concept of sobriety. And I was like, okay, this is what I got to do. But it was like, this is what I got to do for court. It wasn't like, this is what I need to do for my emotional, mental well-being, which at the time, I mean, if I would have just looked at it through a different lens, I would have seen right then that that's what I needed for my emotional, mental well-being. But I was so just down in the thick of it in this deep, dark hole. So basically, the life I had known was gone. So entered this huge level of depression into my life. And so I did what I could to get back on my feet. I learned about sobriety and I gave that a go, and I started building my life again. And it was, I can still do real estate, but like not with my license, but like as an office manager. And then all these things started building back up. But I was missing that healing process that let me take care of my mental health. My mom always was like, go to therapy. And because it was her saying it, and I had this like fierce resentment against my mom and my family, that I didn't have any kind of open ears to anything that she had to say. So I was anti anything to do with mental health. And of course, back then, like even 20 years ago, I mean, there was so much stigma around mental health. Like something was wrong with you. Yeah. If you had depression or you were taking pills, and it was there was a lot of over medication going on. And, so it was like this thing that like, I didn't want to be labeled. And of course my family was like always, hey, maybe you shouldn't drink a whole 12 pack at night. I didn't want to be labeled an alcoholic. So I was like, no, I'm fine. And then I remember when, my mom knew I had tried meth, and she started calling me a meth head, and it drove me absolutely insane, because what it immediately made me feel like was that I was less than, that I was not ever going to amount to anything. So like this label, it was just labels, 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 labels. And so if you're telling yourself these things, you're doomed to like repeat the same thing. So if your core beliefs are telling you you're a piece of crap, or you're not worthy, or because you lost this, that you don't deserve anything good ever again in your life, and those are your core beliefs, and that's what you're telling yourself, then you're thinking it, and then you're going forth with the actions that recertify those core beliefs. And so you're just like stuck in this cycle. So anyways, it wasn't until a couple different tries at sobriety, and I was doing okay, and my daughter's father was like, "Oh, hey, you're doing okay again. Let's get back together." And I mean, it wasn't like that. I'm being totally sarcastic, but it was like, "Oh, hey." And then I was like, "Yeah, this'll fix my life. Let me just jump right back into this." So, I mean, you could just tell where my mindset was. We get back together. We move right in within a month. Okay. The first time was 7 years. The second time it took a month before, we imploded. And then it was like a re-traumatizing situation all over again. It was like that first traumatization of losing a relationship, but like twofold, because it was like the same person again. And so I started doing what I normally did to self-medicate. And this time I picked up where I left off, which was IV drug use. And so he found out that I was using heroin in the house, and he kicked me out. And that's when I started experiencing homelessness. And I first started experiencing homelessness like couch hopping. So it's like I didn't have a place to call my own. I wasn't under a lease. I didn't own a home, but I was surfing my friends' couches. And that went on for a while until they realized how dark and deep I was in dealing with substance use, and I wasn't willing to look at my mental health and what kind of root causes were keeping me stuck in this. It was apparent that this was a very unhealthy lifestyle, but I couldn't stop doing it. And so then my friends were like, "Oh my gosh, we need to distance ourselves from you." And so that's when I started scraping by, trying to pay for motels, and then bouncing, sleeping outside, and then finding a new group of friends to like, "Oh, let's all crash at this person's house for a week." I mean, it was probably the most exhausting, time in my life, but also exhausting mentally, physically, spiritually. Like I felt like I didn't even know who I was anymore. And so not knowing who I was made me not want to feel even more than I didn't want to feel in the first place. So I felt like I just started spiraling farther and farther. And then it was just at the point where, my addiction was so physical and demanding that I couldn't not even think about not using. And of course, that when you're experiencing homelessness and you're also at the same time dealing with, mental health, and I don't want to characterize as every person experiencing homelessness has mental health or substance use issues, because there are actually a lot more people that don't have those issues that are experiencing homelessness. So don't get it twisted that if I'm talking about those three things, those are the main things. Those are my experience around homelessness. And so in our society, it ends up being that if you're unhoused and you're sitting on property that you're not supposed to be on, you end up getting a ticket, and then you get wrapped up in the criminal justice system. I was a little bit more bold with my criminality, just because I was live out there on the streets. You didn't want me around you. I was definitely that person that, Cuica's around. You knew you were going to have either the best night or the worst night. It was always one or the other. But anyways, I ended up bouncing in and out of the criminal justice system for about a year and a half. And I finally got clean when they wouldn't bond me out anymore. They were like, I had jumped on my bond 5 different times because I couldn't even stand the thought of going one night in jail without my fix. So I would get bonded out and immediately use, so then I would break all my bond conditions. And so that happened about 5 times. And so when I got arrested the 6th time, they were like, no bond. But I was so grateful for getting locked up that time. Now, if you would have asked me if I was grateful on day 1, no. But, over 3 months later, if you'd asked me if I was grateful, absolutely. It was the time that I needed to have that separation. And then, when I got out, my mom was like, all right, I'm going to help you. But this is not a permanent thing. Like, you have 2 weeks and then you got to get out of here. So you had to figure out where you're going to go. And then that's when I started this wonderful journey of recovery and combining all sorts of different things within community organizations and other fellowships. And I kind of pieced together my puzzle that started with all of my wellness. So it was a roof over my head. It was taking care of my physical and mental health. And then also taking care of my spirituality, my spirit. And I did that by combining a bunch of different things, basically going from isolation to a whole community, a whole network of people that were supporting me along my journey. And then that's when it turned into advocacy work and really realizing it started with, I would say, being a woman and experiencing homelessness, I realized that there were very, very limited number of services for single women without homes. There were a lot of family programs and there were a lot of shelter services for men, but very limited when it came to women. So I was very passionate about that right off the start. And that's what got me the volunteering at basically it's a network of churches, but of course I can't think of it right now off the top of my head. Nope, still not coming to me.
No worries.
It was like 5 volunteer things ago. I mean, I started once the doors, floodgates of finding my purpose in life. Then it was like, ooh, I can do so much now. And everything just kind of started falling into place. And but it wasn't, like I had to be aligned. And that meant that I was well all the way through and through. Is it perfect every day? Absolutely not. I mean, I kind of show up as a hot mess half the time, but that's okay because I'm here and I'm well and I can now help other people. So what I want to pull away from my story, well, I don't want to kind of go through my points yet, but so in recovery, and I found my purpose and I started, on this journey of peer support, not only with just mental health and substance use, but peer support as far as homelessness goes. And I got to have an opportunity to work at the Central Library, which is right downtown, which is where, it's like one of the last public places where people experiencing homelessness are allowed to be without having to pay for something or get codes to use the bathroom. And so it ended up being this, hub where there were, any kind of social hub where there's all sorts of different parts of a society coming together, there can be things that can be challenging. And so they found it best to have somebody who has the lived experience be on the front lines of it. And it was, well, first of all, I would have done that job for free. It was so amazing. And I ended up getting paid to do it. And then it ended up becoming a permanent part of the library. So then I became gainfully employed by the city and county of Denver, which is beyond me. Because if you look at me on paper and you compare that to me in reality, I mean, you would be like, that, you're not that same person. I mean, I looked like crap on paper. You know, there was horrible credit, foreclosures, criminal record, gaps in employment. I mean, I don't think you could add any more things that are negative on my paper trail. But here I was, gainfully employed and passionate about helping other people find a way out. And then, of course, you know, being gainfully employed kind of meant some of the services that I used to get back on my feet were now no longer available to me. And so then comes in that funny period where they actually have a name for it, and it's called the cliff effect.
Yeah.
And this is like where that systemic poverty comes into play. Because if you make too much money, you're no longer qualified for this, and this. But yet, in today's economic climate and housing costs, there's no way you can afford to live and sustain it with this gainful employment that now you have. But you're like, oh my gosh, if I like lose all this wraparound service that I cherish and I'm grateful for, if I lose it. So then it's like, I remember there was a time where I'm like, should I quit my job?
Yeah.
And this was like a job that I loved. I found like my purpose in life with this job. And I honestly thought about quitting because I did not want to lose my apartment and start experiencing homelessness.
Right.
I mean, if you would be like, okay, you keep doing the job you love or keep your apartment, I would have chose my apartment 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Because living outside and unhoused for as long as I did, I wouldn't go back to it, you know? So then you start thinking about, wow, this homelessness issue is a lot more complex than just, you know, these are people who, you know, have addiction issues or mental health issues. And of course, a lot of people use a lot more harsh and stigmatizing language when they talk about people who are experiencing homelessness. And it's way more than that. I got to be it was so amazing because I got to be who I needed. So basically I worked one-on-one in this environment where there's no, you know, you don't have to give me your social security number or identify. We weren't like providing any services other than really emotional support. Like, hey, what do you need? Let me give you some resources. Let me point you in the right direction. Yeah. And then sometimes I got to, you know, utilize my own experience and help others just along like a different pathway.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful and so lovely. And then to think that, you know, 2-3 years in, I was like, maybe I shouldn't even keep this job because I don't want to start experiencing homelessness. Like, you can't really do that work and still be living in it. So I've just been, you know, battling my way up. You know, like I've been going through this transition now in my life where I wanted more. I wanted an opportunity where I could grow and do more and be more for people. And so now I'm finally at a place where I don't feel like I need to keep that apartment anymore, and that I can actually go back into home ownership, which is so beyond amazing because that was something that I had put away. Like, that's never going to happen for me again.
Yeah.
And yet I'm on the opposite end of it, and I'm still just super passionate about service and doing what I can to either educate or advocate or just be there for folks that are going through a hard time. So like, you take a lot of the complexity of my story and you really kind of boil it down to childhood emotional trauma that went unresolved. And then from that came like this need, we all have this inherent instinct for self-preservation, right? We take care of ourselves. But some of those self-care things stem from something like emotional trauma. And if not guided, or, you don't learn about how to feel or how to take care of yourself, then your self-care ends up turning into this really destructive pattern. And so how does somebody who, creates this life and like on the outside, I look like I was killing the game.
Yeah.
Like, buying a home at 25, and I dropped out of college, and I thought dropping out of college was going to be the biggest stain on my record. But then when I got this job and I thought I was like gold. So you would never think that somebody whose, career grew out of nowhere, and like this home, buying a home, and this family, this suburbia life, you wouldn't picture that person being somebody who's out on the streets. But it's very true that we all come from somewhere of some kind of raw inherent desire to take care of ourselves. But in my case, that looked a whole lot like self-destruction, because what I thought was taking care of myself ended up being what was killing me. And I only learned how to find new ways to take care of myself by really just how do I take care of my wellness. And I knew that obviously being outside and out on the streets, you're not living a healthy life, even if you're not using drugs or alcohol. Like you're not bathing, or you're not, it's so much stuff. And so I knew that needed to be solved. And then I also, at that time became really willing to talk to somebody about my mental well-being and really figure that out. And then came the, why am I in this pattern of self-destruction? And I learned about that through how to take care of my spirit through sobriety and fellowships that really supported people along that journey. And so it was like a whole combination that started with, first of all, me not continuing to isolate myself by reaching out and asking for help. I need a place to live, finding which organizations do that. And then how do I take care of my spirit and sobriety, and then finding those community organizations that do that. And then really just staying in touch with, doctors for my physical and mental health. And through that, that breaks those isolation barriers, and I continue to grow on a daily basis and learn more about myself and learn more about how to take care of other people, or not really take care of other people, but empower people to take care of themselves. Because I can't make anybody choose a different pathway, but I can be there and support folks along their own journey. And it's been amazing. I mean, the involvement in these community organizations brought up passion inside of me to advocate for people who may have a substance use disorder, or people who have been unhoused either temporarily or chronically, and people who have maybe mental health issues they're not even aware of because they're not even willing to talk about it because they felt judged their whole lives. I mean, it's really just about, having one less barrier to walk through when you meet with me, or when you hear me sharing my truth and getting vulnerable in front of the masses. I do that way too much.
No, it's great. I mean, what a story.
No, it's nutty.
Well, I love how you've taken it and you weren't just like, okay, I solved it and now I'm good and I'm back in real estate and I'm doing my thing. And, no, you immediately were like, wait a second, I can use everything that I've been through and I can immediately start using that for the people who are still experiencing what I experienced, and I can educate the people who haven't experienced it.
Yes.
And people don't, Adrian didn't mean any harm.
No.
Right? And you didn't present it that way. Cause I know when I realized that too, I just got it off the poster. Like, nobody told me, but I was like, I think there's something here. So I began to try to use that language. And, so you can educate the people that haven't experienced it,
Yes.
who don't understand, who don't really get it. And in the same way that people who haven't had a substance use disorder don't really understand what it's like. I mean, they can sympathize, but they can't empathize, right? And there's just something there. So I love that you just immediately started going into advocacy.
Oh, yes. Honestly, I never thought, there was a time when I was on my journey, the beginning part of my journey of wellness, that I didn't want to tell people what I'd been through. It was still at that beginning stage of like, I don't want people to know this about me. And then it was like, hold up. If you want to know me, then you're going to know me. Like what I've been through doesn't define who I am. Like, this is me, and I'm me because I've been through this, and this.
Right.
So to not give honor to what I've been through would be to not honor who I've become today.
Yeah.
And so when I got comfortable sharing and being vulnerable, then it was like more things started to open up. And like that position at the library turned into getting involved in the city's response to homelessness, to substance use disorder. Like, I'm on way too many committees, probably. I am really busy, but it's also like a really good busy because I get to utilize my own voice and my story to make an impact. And the fact that there are places for people to share their lived experience means that they're really trying to get to the root causes. Let's bring the people that this impacts the most to the table when we're making decisions or we're strategizing for a different response. And so that led me to, so I'm chair of the lived experience action team with Department of Public Health and Environment. I'm chair of the Housing People Experiencing Homelessness with the mayor's office in Denver's Road Home. And then that kind of led me to this new appointment of being a board member for the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. And so now I'm like, what? And it's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome because like it was very intimidating the first time I went. Because like my first board meeting, I was like 10 minutes late. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to make the worst first impression. And there was a seat. So there was, a table, and then there were people sitting on the sides of the table. And so I went to the side, and the executive director, or I guess CEO, president of the coalition was like, no, your seat is right up here. And there was one seat left around the table. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm an imposter, but not really. But it felt that way,
Yeah.
So now I get to be that part of housing is health. You really can't have health without a home. And so the Colorado Coalition's mission and Housing First is how can somebody really even get back on their feet without the basic necessities of having a place to lay their head at night that's stable, that's not with 200 other people who are unhoused as well too. I'm so grateful for the shelter and shelter services and homelessness services that we have here in the city of Denver. We have a bunch of great community organizations all coming together, but at the same time, there are huge gaps.
Yeah.
Like huge gaps. Like somebody right now are the housing lists that are out there are like up to 3 years now waiting.
Wow.
So you're talking about living in shelter services for 3 years and you're not being able to take care of yourself.
No.
You're sharing your bathroom with how many other people, barely getting enough sleep. Somebody, in environments like that, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
So vulnerable people taking advantage of even more vulnerable people. And it's just like, it comes out of that basic necessity to survive.
Right.
So the person that's stealing, that might be the only way they know how to survive.
Yeah.
And granted, yes, it looks really bad and it's really messed up. But if you boil it down to the root cause, it's survival.
Yeah.
And so then that could end up tail spinning somebody else's journey because they have to go get new IDs, or maybe they were job hunting and now they can't apply for jobs because if they get the job, they can't prove their identity.
Right.
And then it's like this whole other thing. And then like, are you getting enough sleep in environments like that? If you're sleeping outside or if you're sleeping in a shelter, are you even able to show up and be present?
Right.
Are you able to pay for your bus ticket to get there? I mean, it's so many different things. And like, really just, I want to, if I just can, educate one person on how tiring and exhausting, experiencing homelessness is. I mean, by the time somebody gets up in the shelter system, they've stood in at least 2 to 3 lines by like 6 a.m. Wow. The line for the bathroom, the line for the bus, the line for lunch. And and it's sometimes they serve lunch at like 10 or 11, they're eating breakfast at 4 or 5. So, I mean, if you think you had to start your day like that, you'd be exhausted. Nonetheless, trying to get all of your basic needs met.
Yeah.
And look for a job and look for housing. And I mean, it's a lot.
And then come back in the evening and do it again to get back in.
All over again.
Yeah. And like we were talking about how the city, because where Adrian and I stay, we see the buses, pull up to bring the people. And I never had thought about it until you mentioned it earlier, how, like, if you're looking for a job, but you take a bus ride to somewhere else in the city, and then you have to come back in the morning, it's almost an impossible hurdle. Like, once you're
That's
there,
all you get done that
it,
day.
Yeah, once you're in it, it seems like it's so difficult to do, because most people would think, and I know I've thought this, before I lived at the Phoenix Concept, I was a privileged person in the sense that I had never, and I am still privileged, I'd never had to do that. I came very close to it with my substance use, but never experienced it. But I grew up in the suburbs where that was pushed out by the police. I mean, like, you couldn't, like, they would just come and like take you to another place or something. I don't know. So I never had lived around it or seen it in person, and you don't know. So you think, well, why can't, shouldn't he be like looking for some work? But you never think, maybe this guy has literally been up since 4 a.m., stood in 4 lines, and just wants to sit down with nobody bothering him for 45 minutes. And yeah, maybe he is smoking a cigarette, because like, what else has he got to do? Like, and are you somebody judging him? Because what would I do if I'd been up at 4, had stayed in 4 lines, worried, anxiety?
Oh my gosh.
Just all the time having to like worry about somebody taking my stuff or hurting me or something like that. I don't know. It's one of those deals where you can't really walk in somebody's shoes, but it is so interesting to think about what my response or if anybody was listening to this who would think about what would your response be, Yes. It's a powerful story, and it's a complex issue.
Yes.
And it doesn't, we couldn't just, because like we were talking earlier, you might think, okay, well, let's just get $500 million and let's just build apartment buildings and then let everybody stay there. But then you also have to deal with the root causes sometimes of why somebody was there.
Yes.
Because otherwise, nothing will change.
Some people need supportive services.
Yeah.
Some people just, so my journey, because I can really only talk about what I experienced from my point of view. I mean, I can bring up all the basic kind of generalized issues, but it was like, okay, so now I'm housed, and I was transitionally housed at first. So that was like a group environment. And then I transitioned into my own apartment, but it was like, it took, I want to say, a solid year and a half before I even felt like I was making some headway. I mean, I had so much insecurity, feeling like I wasn't good enough. I was never, what am I ever going to do, as far as employment goes? And it wasn't, and then, taking care of my mental health, which was the first time in my life I'd ever gone on that journey. And so there was, a lot of raw feeling and like inadequacies and all this stuff. So I was really just, I need to take care of myself, and really just building on my sobriety, building on taking care of my mental health. But I came into contact with all these different community organizations. So I was out there. I was like figuring out this and, doing reentry services and doing programs, like, some, 12-step fellowships. And I was doing so much. I think I was accountable to like 6 different people at one point during my journey of healing. And they were all different. They all served like a purpose. Yeah. What kind of questions you got for me, Adrian? I saw you. I saw you just like scribbling over there. I know he's plotting.
Yeah,
what's happening right now.
I do some very, very intentful listening. I'm learning, and that's why I haven't spoken.
Yeah.
Because everything you're saying is so important.
Oh,
especially as a human being in general, right? But especially because I'm privileged enough to live in an area where my neighbors are that close to me, and I can take action easily every day as I leave the building, and that kind of thing. So thank you, first of all.
Oh,
thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I do have questions.
Shoot.
Okay. So you mentioned something that, because, sometimes we text, like, in our day-to-day life, right? I'll text you, I'll be like, hey, what's up, Cuica? How you doing? You're just like, I'm so tired. I'm just trying to lay here, right? And I'm like, yo, I get it, right? You're so busy. So, because you're one of the busiest people that I know, right? And but yet your enthusiasm and your energy is so high.
Oh yeah.
Right? What can people do to tap into, because I feel like you're tapped into, like, like people talk about the source energy, right? So what is it, what can people do to like tap into that? Because not everyone gets to enjoy that. And I feel currently at this point in my life that I am getting there also, because I'm doing everything that I love to do, things that fulfill me, but also I've made everything about, trying to touch other people's lives, trying to impact them, right? And somehow, the universe is taking care of me also, So, and I'm very grateful for that. So, and I'd like to know, since we're experiencing this thing, like, in your opinion, how can people find that, Just first question. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Could you throw me a harder question? Just right off the bat,
or for yourself, just
look at Aaron's over there giving you some like icy stares.
No, it was an impressive icy stare, because he's just over there and he's kind of like keeping quiet. Me and you talking a little bit. I'm like, what's Adrian doing? And then he just like jumps in with like some serious. I was like, how do I connect to the source energy?
I think it's so important.
No, but it's absolutely important.
It's such a privilege, and I talk to Owen about this all the time. I'm just like, I can't believe the space that I'm in right now, and I like how fortunate I am. I wish everyone can like feel this,
Yeah,
absolutely.
So like just you don't have to get we're not.
Well, I mean, I think it boils down to some very basic things. First of all, really taking care of your being, your wellness is number one. So whatever that looks like for the individual, taking care of your wellness, but then also figuring out, what can I do to help others? And it looks different for everybody. Like for me, yes, I'm loud and quirky and weird and giggly, and and I know how to network with people, and I meet people, and I'm like, all of a sudden it's like 6 degrees of Cuica Montoya. I was like, who does she know? Oh, I know that person. I went to high school with them.
Right.
It's so crazy because I grew up here, so I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people doing some really cool things. So I think that's an amazing question. And I think it's about finding what can you do for others without compromising your well-being. So obviously, like some people have extra money. Find an organization that's really like doing the work. And I think that there are some amazing organizations that are really serving people experiencing challenges. There's, I'll just name drop like the Harm Reduction Action Center, keeping the public and people safe. There's Earthlinks, which is a community with gardening and, work for folks. And so it provides this kind of healing transformation with not only yourself, but with the earth. I think that's really important for people. But there are organizations out there. Usually you can just think about, I don't know, a combination of things that you're passionate about. Throw it in that Google search bar and be like, dear internet, I want to find an organization doing this, and either monetarily help or volunteer your time or maybe volunteer goods. I mean, I think that finding what that need is and not just throwing some half-ass response to like service for others. I think that, there can be a really authentic way to give part of yourself or service.
Yeah.
To a cause. And I think it needs to be something that you're passionate about. And it also needs to be something that's not going to drain your own energy and your own well-being. And then I think it's, keep doing what you can to be a good person to yourself, a good person to your neighbors, a good person just in your daily life, like going to work and being the best you can be. So I think that, there's a way. Self-care, service.
Nice.
Community. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great answer. I think all those things are very true. I can, check all the boxes. I have all of those things, and I feel very lucky to have all of those things, in my life. You kind of answered my second question.
Ooh, boom.
In that question.
That's how I roll. Just kidding.
But I was going to ask, so either as individuals, so like it's a two-part question, like as individuals, what can people do, to contribute to this solution? And you said, giving of, time or if you have some money, give that. Is there anything else that
your voice,
okay.
Speaking, truth, educating people. Sometimes it's just having a conversation with somebody and really just opening that dialogue can do so much. Like your podcast is called To Teach One. And so it's say we teach one person and then that one person teaches another person.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we're all teaching the same thing, which is let's humanize some of these really big societal challenges and make it like it could be you or the person sitting next to you. It could be right in your own home or in your workplace. It's like the more that you can humanize an experience that somebody's having it really just, well, first of all, it takes down those walls. Because I think that unfortunately in our society today, where, if you think about people who are unhoused, they don't have those 4 walls. And then so think about you at your lowest time without 4 walls around you. I mean, it could look really bad for some people, or it could not look as bad for some other people. But either way, you know, you have to just really tap into that empathy piece and like, gosh, I don't know. Now I'm fumbling over my words because your questions are so serious. Oh my God.
That's just me. Second question, and then we'll.
Yeah, it's
You're on your third one.
Oh no! This one was it was a two-parter. It was a two-parter. So on an individual basis, how it didn't start that way.
So fancy.
Oh please. Okay, all right. I'll start now. Okay, so this question was a two-parter, right? And the first part asked about, you know, what can people do on an individual basis. Along the same vein, I was thinking about this because we spoke about you spoke about how on any given day, a person that may be experiencing homelessness has this whole process of lining up to do all these different things, and it's a very time consuming, you know, process, right? And by the time you're getting anything done, you're so exhausted. And, you know, Aaron was like, you know, I'd want to just like sit down and have a minute, right? And then you get people saying, why don't they just go get a job, right? And I've been guilty of saying, you know, that too, or at least thinking it and innocently saying, why don't that person do that, right? Mm-hmm. So that got me thinking. So say someone does go out and let's say they decide to go to Ready Man, right? Mm-hmm. And you haven't had perhaps the time to access any, you know, monetary resources or anything like that, right? So now you're going to Ready Man, you have to work, you don't have anything to eat maybe, right? Maybe it's your first day. It's your first day, right? So you're just getting into the process of trying to get something done. And you have all of these other things, you know, that you've got going on. Like, you know, it's a very...
Yeah, you could possibly not eat that initial first couple days because you got to think that you're missing out on standing in the lines,
right?
If you're at work,
right,
or waiting to work. Like places like Ready Man, you could sit there and line up at 5 o'clock in the morning and still not.
You may not go out that day.
May not go out that day. So then you could imagine how quickly any kind of motivation or desire can just get. Just in the natural flow of how that process works, could get stamped out really quick.
Right.
Sure, yeah.
And how long is it until that turns into a situation where now you're dealing with depression? You know, I mean, it snowballs, right? It's a domino effect.
I don't see how anybody who's experienced homelessness has not experienced at the same time situational depression at the very least. Right. At the very least.
Right.
If not, a stressor for something, you know, more intense.
Right.
You know.
So I guess having said all that, right, what can organizations do? Like I just mentioned Ready Man, right? Mm-hmm. What can they do to actually, perhaps if they were educated about all these things that are happening, if someone came in, they needed to work that day, but yes, they don't have money, you know, right off the bat to buy something to eat. They may not have some resources that are like really, really key to let them feel confident about spending that time, even if it's just trying to get a job that day, right? Mm-hmm. You know, what can companies do to like try and create a situation where people feel like secure, right? And safe about going there and spending that time and not thinking about how, oh, I could have been, you know, lining up for, you know, some resources of food, whatever it may be somewhere else.
I mean, so that's a great question. Well, I like to go back to, you know, vocational training or skill building, especially in when I first learned that I could go through a training to utilize my own lived experience and earn a living, I was like, bet, sign me up. All the like negative, I could channel it to get paid. All right. You know, I'll start building a new life for myself. And then that opened itself up to something else and then something else. So I think that having, either a training program or maybe some sort of transitional program to employment or something. I mean, I really think that, we're kind of living in a really cool time because people in this community are talking about some really serious stuff. I know I just got an email saying that, the ban the box legislation that got voted in is now in play. So that means you don't have to check a box. So you won't get weeded out in the job application process just based on, have you ever committed a crime? It's like, you don't even have the opportunity. Like a lot of employers will just weed you out in the no pile right off giddy up. Yeah. So it's about, really, how can we honor people for just living life and even with challenges? Like, I really feel like organizations, like, yes, there needs to be like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to just narrow it down to like one thing.
Right.
But I think that, opening yourself up to actually finding what the biggest need that you as an organization can fulfill, I think that, it'll take some time, research, what can we do, and then do that. It's not focusing on the things you can't do.
Right.
It's focusing on what you can do. Like, not every organization's going to be able to like, oh, I have this, skill trade training I can offer.
Right.
Like my new job, we do culinary training, for folks. It's totally free. And we pay as a reward, incentivize folks to complete the training as well too. So obviously it's super easy for me to be like, hey, come learn a new, vocational skill. Yeah. And it's actually a career path that you can go really far in. Not all organizations can do that. But it's also like, hey, maybe, we can have a community partnership where we volunteer all as employees for X, Y, and Z in the homelessness field. Or, for me, it was it's going to bother me that I can't remember what that, partnership was for women in homelessness. I'm going to remember it as soon as that recorder turns off. It'll be like, oh, now I remember. But all I could at that time in my life was volunteer an 8-hour overnight shift for a temporary shelter to house women experiencing homelessness. So, and then it's changed over the last 4 or 5 years of what I can do. Yeah. So I think it's about coming at it from a different perspective. Like, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, we don't have any money to do this, or we don't have the manpower. It's like, no, let's just start channeling that towards, let's figure out what we can do. Whether it's time, whether it's lending your social media platform, or if it's coming together with a couple different organizations. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, but I also think it's really important to educate yourself on what the needs are. And not just like donate a bunch of like dry peanut butter crackers that
right.
They, typically won't have a drink to go along with it. It's like finding what can we do to make a positive impact and not just be some like taking up space.
Right.
Eye rolling, oh, not another cheese and peanut butter cracker.
Right. So practicing like more mindfulness,
yes.
in the way you approach that, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And focusing, I like what you said, it's such a multifaceted issue and problem that one is tempted to look at it and throw up their hands and say, I can't solve this, so I'm not going to do anything.
Right.
But that's not what you're saying. Find what you can do and then do that. And also, don't just do something like, I'm going to collect, we're having a canned food drive, and then I'm all going to just drop it off in front of the center, and then I'm done, because I've done my part. I did the canned food drive 3 months ago, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't work either. And so don't just do something to salve your conscience, and then don't be so overwhelmed by the problem that you can't, you don't do anything. It's really, and I think that begins with the language. Like you said, it just begins on how we talk about it, and then how we realize these are our neighbors. They are our unhoused neighbors, because it puts it in a different frame of mind.
Yeah.
And then it's not those people and us. It's all of us together. And then what can I do? Just something simple. And we had a gentleman on a few weeks ago, Vinny, right?
Yeah.
And I remember him telling the story about how he had just engaged in a conversation. Like, the guy wasn't asking for, he had seen him several times, and just engaging conversation with people, just treating human beings like human beings. And if that's where you start, that's where you start.
Absolutely.
I've seen some stuff that just, some situations where you're just walking down the street and people talking to people, and me just overhearing it, and you just think, wow, how do you speak to another human being like that? And then, but I have to reflect on me. How many times do I walk by and intentionally not make eye contact because I don't want to experience that moment where I can't do anything, right? And I think it just begins in looking within, and for an organization, be the same thing.
Well,
right?
and of course, and it's like also, like, maybe it begins with changing the way you phrase your own thoughts.
Right?
It could be as like basic and, foundational as that. Like, instead of walking by and say, like, if you think it, like, I don't want, to feel like I'm ever judging people who think like things.
Sure.
Like, I just like to educate. Like, you hear like, oh, that lazy bum. Like, instead of thinking, oh, that lazy bum, think, that is somebody going through a really tough time.
Yeah.
And like, just even that process of starting to switch your internal dialogue will then turn into something that you can externally dialogue about. And then maybe that external dialogue turns into volunteering to maybe educate other organizations. Hey, let's all start using this language. That's why I always love, once I found out about person first language and being trained on it, because even just if you go through and think about all your own self stigmatization and how you talk about yourself to yourself, I mean, there's a lot of judgment and negative talk. So it's about just hitting pause and spinning it in a different positive way.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Because it's simple and it's powerful, and it's something that anybody could literally do right now.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, you could have that conversation with yourself. And no judgment.
No judgment.
No judgment at all on anybody. It's just education.
Yes.
And let's begin to use this language a little bit differently. And it's interesting because I come from a place in a culture where people, I don't want to say, I've heard some of them use the term, like, I don't want to be politically correct. I want to speak like I want to speak. And I think it's about changing that conversation, even with those people. Like, we're not telling you how to talk. We're just asking you to think about it. Like, think about how you would feel in this way. And if somebody were using that language against you. And I think there's this whole culture of, like, I am not experiencing this and you are. So somehow, if I think of myself as better and think of you as worse, like you've done something wrong, then that fear of it happening to me doesn't occur.
Well, yeah, like fear. I think fear of the unknown, or fear of a lot of different things, are kind of, that's like at the base of a lot of this misconceptions or judgment. And I think that judgment piece was learning about how not to judge myself.
Yeah.
Was the starter for me. Was like, okay, so then if I can do this to myself, I can do this. I can take that non-judgment to, somebody else. I mean, we're not all like perfect human beings. Like I still correct myself when some thought passes through my head and I'm like, oh, that was kind of gross. And then I stop myself. But it's kind of something that us as a society, it's been so ingrained, and it's been us versus them for so long, like rich versus poor, housed versus unhoused, educated versus uneducated. We've had this us versus them thing so ingrained that sometimes it's just going to take time.
Yeah.
But it's going to take time with the openness and the willingness and the vulnerability of, let me just not separate myself from something that I don't know what's going on with that person. So I don't need to separate myself, but I can honestly just be here.
Yeah.
And it's really just, I like to honor people for where they are and who they are at that exact moment in time, no matter what is going on.
Yeah.
It's like that person, where they are, is an amazing human being and has been through a journey that you can never even imagine. Even walking in their own exact shoes, you still wouldn't know what it was like to be that person at this point in their lives at this time. And so it's just really honoring somebody.
Wow. That's impressive.
Oh my God. I'm so weird.
No.
No.
That is powerful. I think we need to elect you president. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh my God.
I can I be your campaign manager?
You know what Flo and Owen calls me? He calls me Senator Cuica.
He's trying to speak it into existence.
He is speaking it into existence, probably. I mean, I've never even thought of it, but I'm venturing on some leadership training
I think you should definitely do that. I think that
Come on, guys.
You have my vote.
Yeah, I'm voting for you.
Hi. My name is Cuica Montoya.
It killed my father.
Prepare to die.
Wait, could that be the campaign slogan?
I was just going to say, could we,
I don't know that we might get in trouble with
you'd have to ask for the rights.
I would say have the syllables match that phrase, but have different words. Yeah, my name is Cuica Montoya. You da-da-da. I mean, come on. We'll come up with it.
We'll work on it.
Audience, please email any thoughts.
Suggestions for campaign slogans that kind of rhyme with "You Killed My Father," but we'll build new homes, or we'll solve. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
We'll honor your presence.
Oh, what?
I know.
Cuica Montoya will honor your presence. I don't know.
Something else. I don't know. I'm so fancy. Yeah. I definitely think I'm so fancy. It should be in there somewhere.
I'm so fancy. Wait, that could be the song.
I snorted.
That's okay. The fancy, what's her name? Iggy Azalea, that fancy song?
Yeah.
That could be when you get up on stage, how everybody has their song that they play? That could be
yes.
I think and people loved that song. And
I'm so fancy. I can't sing
I
the
don't
rest
even know how it goes.
I don't want to get a cease and desist letter.
We should be so lucky.
I know, right? Oh my God.
Find somebody way cooler than an Iggy Azalea to the, you know what I'm saying?
But I don't know why, but that song is so catchy that I was like,
Yeah.
I get it.
They're good at their jobs, man.
It's true. That's what they do. We just need to come up with something that catchy. We don't have to use that thing.
God.
I will vote for you guys. You guys would be an amazing pair on the campaign trail. And this guy lives for that kind of stuff. You guys would be great.
Absolutely.
Would we get anything done, though?
Yes. Well, no. Well, yeah, we'd have to.
You'd get everything done.
This is where Adrian comes in. It's like, okay, you two be quiet and
stop.
Put that energy to work.
Right. You got to channel the energy. Focus it.
So amazing.
Well, there's this thing, right, where people often say, I don't follow politics, or I don't get involved in that, or I don't, but the thing is, those are where the decisions are made. These problems that people have, these issues that people have, and I think you understand this, in those rooms where those people talk about things that are sometimes boring and you don't feel like you're a part of, what you've done is just said, I'm going to be a part of it. I'm going to be part of it. and I'm going to try to help. And that is the beginning of what politics is supposed to be. I mean, oftentimes
Right.
it's this contest between prima donnas or who has the most money, but at its basic
That would
core,
not be me.
but at its core, it's about solving societal issues. Because at a certain point, we all have to come together and figure out, where are we going to make this new road? Where are we going to build this new thing? What are we going to do with these tax dollars? And those decisions need to be made by people who are informed, who care, who have a vision. And I think you have all those things. And that's what I look for when because I've run across several people who I think should be involved in that. And that is at the core of what our true statespersons have been. People who really wanted to make a difference. And I mean, not all of them, but the good ones, the ones that people talk about, because you introduce and promote legislation and initiatives that actually help people, right? And that's what it ought to be about. And you want people in that position who've experienced things, not just kind of been born into a family with money, which, at the higher levels, I'm sure that happens.
Oh my
but,
God, that's like literally, it's like the private club that you can't get into unless you've done this, 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 and this.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking about that too with like college education, how expensive it is. And then you do run across that situation where you're like, I can go this high, but no higher unless I spend this money to get this piece of paper.
Oh my gosh, it's the most frustrating ceiling you can hit too.
Yeah, it really is. And, but
I'm going to find one of these like a way, or I'm going to create a way where you can utilize something that you've been through to qualify for this, and this.
Well, I've been doing some research lately, and this is a little off topic, and we can talk more about it after the show. But there are some very interesting, innovative things going on where they're recognizing that. Because I almost was like, you know what? I'm just going to pay $400 and get a degree from blah, blah, blah university that exists only on paper. Because, and then I thought, well, I don't want to do that either. I don't want to be disingenuous and inauthentic. But I would like to find a way to cross that divide. And there's some stuff out there. It's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, I've been doing some research lately. But I'm sure Adrian has some more questions.
I don't. If anything, I was going to say, is there anything you would like to add? Because I think we're getting close, to
No, say it's not so.
to the conclusion. We can talk all we want after this, man.
No, that's true.
I mean, I get it. She's
this
amazing.
is past my bedtime, guys.
Okay, exactly.
I'm just kidding. Saturday night. I'm so tired. I know. I've literally have people call me lame, and I'm like, well, you know what? I will be lame because I am so tired, and I give so much of myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
These days, that unplugging and charging is important.
Very.
Well, it's like you said, I like also what you said. It's not about going out there and destroying yourself, helping find what you can do. Keep yourself charged up though, because that's key, especially for those of us
Super key.
in this community that we all belong to. Like, we realize that, like, I can't do anything for you if I am out of whack.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Oh my gosh, I wish you would have told me that in advance. I would have had like some fancy little sentence to throw out there.
Nah, you don't have
I
to.
would
You don't
say,
have to.
I would say, think about personalizing an experience that you don't quite understand, just to expand what it would look like to not judge other people for their particular situation at the time. So it's whatever you hold most stigmatized thoughts about and try to challenge yourself is what I would leave that with, is what can I do differently today to not only be a better human for my next door neighbor, but also to be a better human for the community in which I live.
Beautiful.
I challenge you.
Well said. Well said. So there it is. The challenge has been issued. Again, you're just that was Cuica.
Yeah, Montoya.
Why are you shaking your head at me?
Oh no, I'm not.
Sorry.
I'm just
I was,
impressed. I'm like,
fight.
no.
I was like, wait, what's going on?
No,
This is another cue that I didn't know. It just invented it.
I'm totally doing that in my next board meeting.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm
No
just
idea.
so totally impressed that. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm super happy with this.
Yeah, wow. I thank you so much for coming on and
Yes,
talking
my
about
pleasure.
this. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So with that, our guest today was Cuica Montoya. She is a community advocate, board member at the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, peer and employment specialist, currently working for Work Options for Women. You can reach her at cmrecoverycoach@gmail.com, or on Facebook at CUICAM Cuica M. Feel free to also send us an email if you'd like to. You can do that at www.2teachone.com. That's www.2teach1.com. Or you can reach us on Facebook and Instagram at TWOTEACHONE.
To teach one.
Right. And so, there's something I always, say that, it's not always the qualified that are called on. It's the willing. And if there's anyone that embodies
Ooh, I like that.
if there's anyone that embodies that, Cuica is definitely part of the club.
Cuica.
The Aztec. Cuica. Beauty.
Oh my God.
Powerhouse.
I used to call myself Princesa Azteca.
It's very fitting.
Yeah, it is.
Very fitting.
Yeah.
I'm an Aztec princess.
Oh man. All right. So with that, we thank you so much for joining us.
Really, thank you.
We really hope that, we can have Cuica back again. She has a lot of insight to give. Maybe on another topic.
Yeah. Let us know.
All right.
Let them know to teach one. Do it.
All right. So, with that, we'll sign off. My name's Adrian.
My name's Aaron.
And I'm Cuica.
Until next time, remember to double down on happiness.